chat.
First, let me just say, congrats on the birth of your son. That's exciting.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, spoiler alert. I may the fatigue made me have some crazy rants. So
Yeah. I mean,
if I go off, feel free to stop me.
yeah, we have a 4-month-old, so you and I are
Oh,
kind of in
you
the
get
same.
it. You get it.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's why I do my interviews a little bit later at times because
Yeah.
it's like after I put both kids down is like the. I mean, on rare occasions, if a guest like if I'm dealing with somebody that's like overseas or something and there's no other choice, then I can crowbar something in. But usually, I'm like a vampire. The night is where I do my thing.
No, I get it. I get it. It's totally about timing for those windows.
How has it
All
changed
right.
your life, Trey?
Oof, I mean, in every way. I mean, he's a month old now, so we're still in the phase where it's just like every 2 3 hours. It's that cycle. It's feed, sleep, a little bit of play, 5 minutes here and there, back to sleep, eat, feed, sleep. So it's new for me to just have this one amazing thing that just takes all of my focus, my attention, my love, just everything. And it's simultaneously the most rewarding and most exhausting period of my life for sure.
It's one of those things that has to be lived because otherwise you
Yeah.
just don't understand. I mean, and I'll tell you, I don't know if you and your wife are planning on having a second,
Mm.
but one is one, two is like three. So so
Yeah.
so good luck for whatever that is. But yeah, man, you're
Uh,
right. Like I mean, mine's four. My boy turned 4 months,
uh,
and just like it's the same thing. As he's either colicky or he's crying, and it's
yeah.
just like we try everything, but it's like. Yeah, man. So you're in for a ride, but
And it's
congratulations.
thank you so much. Thank you. I know, and it's a crazy thing. You get used to it, and you feel like you kind of have everything dialed in, and then there's a new change. He has a growth
Yes.
spurt. He doesn't like this. He likes that. It's just it tests you, but it's the like I said, it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah,
So
man, that's
yeah.
terrific. That's terrific. So I'm reading early on in your life, right? So
Mhm.
um you at a young age you move from your whole family does from California to Buffalo. I
Yeah.
feel like that would be culture shock. I feel like that would be like a shocking move. Like you couldn't find a
Yeah.
place much different from California than Buffalo, New York. I
It's
feel like
so true. It's so true. So yeah, it was a culture shock in a particular way. So the primary impetus for us moving, it was 1994, I believe, and the Northridge earthquake had just happened,
yep.
and we were in the process of actually moving. We were living in LA, LA proper, and my parents had just gotten a house in Northridge. We were literally in between houses, and we were staying with my mom's family. My mom's originally from Buffalo
Right.
when the earthquake happened, and the house that we were going to move into was completely destroyed. And at the same time, it coincidentally had nothing to do with it. My dad, who was a screenwriter at the time, was writing for a series, and the series got canceled. So we had no house. My dad had no job, and we were already in Buffalo with my mom's family. And so my parents just kind of said, "We have a young baby." I was two and a half, I think, at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and no income stream, and there's no way we can make this work in LA. They were also really freaked out about the earthquake. We said, let's stay in Buffalo for a little while we get back on our feet. Uh, Fast forward, I grew up there. I lived there until I was 18 years old. I always loved LA though. We would
Yeah.
go back once a year. We had family and friends. So I always felt like kind of an honorary Angelino, even though I didn't really grow up here. It was always a big part of my life. So the funny thing, I ended up going to college in New York City, and I met my girlfriend, who's now my wife, there,
Yep.
and it turns out she's from LA. And so, by virtue of us meeting and also what I wanted to do for a living, LA was kind of a perfect destination. So
And,
now I've
and that
moved
was
back.
Columbia, right? Trey, that was Columbia,
Yes,
right? Yeah. Okay.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I went to Columbia and moved from New York out here. my parents ended up doing the same. So we kind of made this full circle move from LA to New York and then back to LA. So that's kind of just a, you know, funny turn of events.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned your dad was a screenwriter. I think mom was a actor and producer. Is that correct?
Yeah. Wow, you've done your homework.
So did they make a did they make a living from this, or was this something they were trying to get into at the time?
Yeah, you know, I know I was so little at the time. I think it kind of went in and out. There were periods where they made a living at it, and then periods where it was tougher. I think it also, one thing that I've learned, there's making a living for yourself. There's making a living for yourself and your spouse, and then there's making a living when you have a baby.
Yeah.
And I think when I came, it changed things for sure. And I think that's also what prompted the move, is just a kind of general lifestyle change. My dad started his own business that was totally unrelated to the entertainment industry, which was honestly probably the healthiest thing he could have ever done. And it was I think a nice thing for me to grow up in a smaller city away from the trappings of LA and the entertainment industry, especially at that time.
Yeah, yeah. Does one ever get used to the snow in Buffalo? Does one ever accept that?
No. There is no way in life. There's no layers that you can wear that make -5 degrees with a -20 wind chill feel okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And you forget it too, because in the summer it gets hot. That's the thing that people don't realize about the East Coast, is everybody talks about the winters or the mid. Buffalo is really Midwest, honestly. It's both location and culturally. It's more Midwestern. They talk about the cold winters, but then you get 2 weeks of spring, and then you get 98-degree summers. So all summer you're praying for winter to come. You've already forgotten about how terrible it is, and then winter comes. And then you're praying for summer because you forgot how humid it was. And so it's just this kind of cycle from hot, cold. And so it's it was a very indoor lifestyle, which is one thing I appreciate about being out here. In the winter, you were always inside, afraid of the cold, and then in the summer, you were inside with the air conditioning. So being in LA, where it's kind of always hovering between 70 and 80 and dry, is good for the vitamin D. I don't need to take a vitamin D supplement.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Massachusetts, so I get it. Yeah. I mean, but I feel like our winters lately, last 10 years, haven't been as bad as I remember them being growing up. I feel like it's whatever you will.
It's definitely changed a lot. I mean, you can track with Buffalo, you can track the average temperature coming from the 70s to now in the winter, and it's just a straight line up. The thing, you'll still get the freak snowstorms though, which actually the warm temperature in the winter can actually make the snowstorms more dangerous. One thing that happened when I was in high school, we had this crazy blizzard that happened in October, and it had been like 50, 60 degrees prior. All the leaves were still on the trees. I don't even know if they had changed. And then we had a blizzard completely out of nowhere, like 6-8 feet of snow.
Wow.
And because there were leaves on the trees, all the trees piled up with snow, and the trees came down. And so it caused it was a terrible, terrible thing. There was power outages for like 10 days. Ours was the only house with power, so the whole family was staying there. It was kind of like a refugee camp.
Yeah, like a retreat. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's caused problems. A similar thing happened this past winter. There was a terrible blizzard that came out of nowhere in December. It was around Christmas, New Year's, and it was the same thing. It had been 50, 60 degrees, so no one was ready for it. And then all of a sudden, you get 8 feet of snow.
Yeah. Speaking of you as a kid, one of the things that I read growing up, you were like me. I mean, I love that James Horner Braveheart soundtrack. I mean, that is so. But like, I feel like I miss him. Like, I feel like it was a huge loss because, first of all, I hate those stupid little planes. I hate them.
Oh God, I know. Why do they do it? Why do they do it?
But like, he had Titanic. He had A Beautiful Mind, Field of Dreams, and Braveheart, so many more. And what a loss. It's almost been, can you believe, Trey, it's almost been 10 years? It was 15.
I know.
So it's like a couple of years
because it was I remember vividly because it was my first internship out in LA, actually. I was in grad school in New York, and I was spending the summer in LA, and it was my first time working in film music, and it was just such an exciting time. And bam, that happened out of the blue. And he, more than anyone, is probably my biggest artistic influence, because my love of film and my love of music really coalesced with him. He, in my opinion, of the composers of the last century, he's the greatest storyteller of them all. There are some amazing musical talents out there, and he was a musical giant, but he really shone as a storyteller. And all my favorite films growing up had his scores. And my first album that I ever had was a CD of Braveheart, and that was the first music I ever listened to as a kid. I remember when my dad gave it to me, and when I would go on walks with him, I would listen to it, and it was his music and his contribution to film left an unbelievable impression on me. So losing him, especially having come out here and feeling fresh, I wanted to meet him. I wanted to, one day maybe pick his brain or work for him or something. And it felt like such a loss. It felt like a friend or family member.
Yeah, James Horner, supremely talented. Big loss there. How far between until you hook up with Trevor Morris, who that's your kind of, would you say that's your first big break? Would you say it that way?
Yeah. Oh, easily. Yeah. So it was very quick. It was one of those classic stories of just being in the right place at the right time. So like I said, I did an internship that summer of 2015 with Gary Scheinman, who is an amazing video game composer. He's known especially from the BioShock series. And that was just my first kind of dipping my toe in the water of the industry, learning about the process, the people, the technology. And then I moved out here officially in January of 2016. I think I moved here like New Year's Day, maybe, or New Year's Eve. And I had an internship with Joe Trapanese, who is an amazing guy. He was terrific. I interned with him for 6 weeks, something like that. And it was an unpaid internship. And I basically moved out here, was living off my savings account, paying rent from my savings account with no income. And it was basically one of those things where I wanted to kind of give it 2-3 months, see if I could find a paying gig. And then if not, get a job doing something else out here while I try to get scoring work. Well, I think it was February. I moved out here in January. I think it was early February. I got a call from Gary saying that there was a composer an anonymous composer who was looking for an assistant, and these were the requirements. These were the hours. This was the process. Are you interested? And I had no idea who it was. All I knew was they were involved in film and TV. So, it could be anybody.
Right.
And when I found out it was Trevor, I was blown away. I was starstruck. I loved his scores to Tudors and Borgias, and he too is a really amazing storyteller. So I was really nervous. I thought there was no way that I was going to get it. I had only been there for a month and a half. All I had under my belt was an internship. But I interviewed, and apparently we clicked. And, I ended up working for him on staff for almost 2 years. 1 year as his kind of tech assistant, and then another 6 months to a year as an in-house writer.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. Looking at your filmography, it's pretty impressive. Foundation, Fear of the Walking Dead, Ghost Rider, Ozark, Vikings. Which one of those do you think is? Would you consider your first? I'm not your first, but the major break for you. I mean, we haven't get to Castlevania yet. But
yeah. Well, it might be a good segue then. I think so. It's kind of two simultaneously. I don't know if I'd say this one was my big break, but it was the first real learning process, and that was Vikings. Vikings, Trevor was already in the middle of when I started working for him. He was on season 4, I believe, And so that was ongoing when I started, and that was really how I got my feet wet. I think the first cue that I ever helped him with was a Vikings cue.
Yeah.
I think it was like 45 seconds. I probably spent 6 hours on it. Did way more than was necessary. And he's probably like, dude, it just needs a pad. Come on. So that was really how I got my feet wet. And then I think in terms of big break, I still sometimes feel like I'm waiting for my big break, but in that context, it would be Castlevania, because that came in right at the beginning of 2017. I think January 2017, we started working on it. And that was the first project where Trevor really trusted me in more of a creative role. I had just moved over from tech assistant over to being an in-house writer. And he was really busy at the time and needed help, and brought me on kind of as a co-producer and writing some additional cues. And it was the first time, like I said, he really trusted me as a writer and not just as an assistant. And so, and it was cool because that show went for 4 seasons. I grew alongside it, and I think I learned the most about the hands-on process of being a film composer from working with him on those 4 seasons.
Yeah, and Castlevania, for those new to this, is the sequel, correct? It is the sequel to the original. Is that a fair?
So you mean Castlevania Nocturne?
Yes.
So it's a sequel in the sense that it's from the same universe and it's in the future from the original, but it's 300 plus years in the future, and it's based on the descendants of the characters in the original Castlevania. Yeah. So it's not a direct sequel, but it is sequentially a sequel.
Is
sequentially a sequel? That's no.
On your end, is there any difference in scoring something that's animated versus? I mean, you've done video game too, I think.
Yes.
So if you compare, if you hold up like a video game scoring, of animation scoring, a series, a movie, whatever. Is it a different approach, or is it the same approach? Because it is just telling a story, just different ways. Yeah.
So my normal answer about animation would be that yes, it's a different process, and typically it's because the animation is 2-dimensional. I think the score sometimes has to work a little bit harder. It has to amplify the drama in a way that you're not getting from a real actor. Seeing a real person's face. Now, I actually would not say that's the case here. I think the animation in the Castlevania universe, and I think Nocturne especially is an even higher level than the original. The animation is so good, and the coloring and the way the characters are drawn is so good that I would say process-wise, there is no difference from scoring a film or a TV show. Comparing it to games, interestingly, the cool thing about music for games is because so much time is spent without dialogue. Now, I'm leaving out cinematics. The process of scoring a cinematic for a game is very similar to the process of scoring a scene. But if you're just talking about scoring gameplay, the music itself has to really stand out, because you're hearing this music on loop, sometimes for hours and hours. And there's not necessarily anything going on the screen in terms of drama. It's just a character interacting with the world and participating in the world of the game. So the music sometimes has to be a little more amplified than music in film or television. Now, I believe for this series that Netflix and the production team really wanted to highlight that, especially since it's based on a game. They really wanted the music to stand out in a way that we might not see in film and TV, which was cool for me and Trevor, because sometimes being TV composers, our job is to sit back and support the drama, which is great. At the end of the day, we're storytellers, and that's what we're brought to do. We're brought to work with the actors and the directors and showrunners to try to create something, and we know we're just a small part. But the cool thing about Nocturne was everybody was very emphatic from the beginning, saying this score is going to be bold, it's going to stand out, and we want to hear it.
Right.
Which was cool. It's not every day we get that request.
Yeah. I mean, what is it? Are they 4 episodes deep into it? I think. Is my math right on that? Nocturne?
Nocturne. No, the premiere of Nocturne is the 28th.
What I was watching a Castlevania today. It had to be the one before Nocturne.
Yeah, it was probably the original.
Yeah.
So the original Castlevania ran for 4 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
The first season was made up of 4 episodes, and then I believe the second through fourth had 8 episodes each. But yes, but there's about, I'm trying to think of when, I forget exactly when season 4 of Castlevania aired, but we at least have a few years in between.
Have you seen the final copy of Nocturne?
Yes, I have.
What can people expect?
I think so. I would say 2 things primarily. One, I think fans of the games are going to be very, very satisfied. I grew up. I played the games as a kid. I was never a fanatical gamer, but I loved the Castlevania games, and it was kind of fun. It was fun to return to them, and I started kind of playing them for fun. It was very nostalgic. I'm playing one right now, actually. My favorite one is Symphony of the Night. And I think that from a storytelling perspective and from a gameplay perspective, it's going to be really fun for fans to see the things they recognize, the new elements, new characters, but also plenty of Easter eggs and fun stuff to kind of make you remember the gameplay. But I will say, on the flip side, one thing that's very cool about the series and really special is while it has the typical action, big epic moments, heart-pounding sequences, all of the stuff you'd expect from an adaptation of an action game, the story is actually very elegantly told, and it's very grounded, and it's ultimately very character-based, which is nice. And each one of the main characters has a very deep backstory, and they bring to it a whole history, experiences, trauma in some cases, and it really adds a depth to the story that's not necessarily there in the games. So I see it less as an adaptation and more as an evolution. Yeah. So the main character Richter is a fan favorite from the games, and we all know him as Richter the action hero.
Right.
We get a little bit of a window into his life, but mainly we just know him as the character from the games. But now in the show, we get to know him as a person, and that applies to several other characters that fans will remember from the games. So you kind of get a feeling like you're really meeting him for the first time, which is special, both for fans of the games and people who might be coming to it for the first time.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a perfect blend, right? You got the nostalgia, plus you have the evolution of this wonderful, iconic game / story. So yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. Let me ask you this before I let you go. Sure. What else is on the horizon for you? Anything non-Castlevania related that you wanted to get out there, or even a social media? I have your website on the screen. Is there anything else you wanted to throw out there, Trey?
Yeah, so I'm working on something right now that is very cool and very exciting, but I still can't talk about it.
Gotcha.
It's still probably a year out.
Yep.
But once I can, I'll be posting about it, and it'll be on my website.
Excellent. Trey, thank you so much for this. I enjoyed talking to you, and congratulations on your child.
Thank you. Same to you.
And your success, and nothing but happy wishes and all that fun stuff.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It was great to chat.